So, welcome back to my very first, the second clip of my very first Business Insight today in a very long time. I think the last recordings I did were there about 2017, 2017, which would be the most recent recording I would have done. So, here we are. In the previous clip, I recalled a time when I had moved on. I was between jobs, so I had worked somewhere for 8.5 years and then moved on subsequently back into the clinical area. So I was working in a medical recruitment uh, as a site clinician, and then moved back to hands-on clinical work as a nurse, general nurse, and this was 8.5 years later. And during this period, I had a period of between the month of November, so that was almost 2 months, November and December, nearly till the end of December 2013. And during that period, I had zero coming into my account in the form of employment income. And yet I had my mortgage to pay, and so that was really a tough time. It made me aware of my shortcomings in terms of transition from um, employment into another employment. And so I had that gap. I needed just that help in those 2 months. And what do you suppose I did? Well, first of all, I did a lot of self examination. So I took stock of what were my assets, what were my resources for problem solving, because I knew that I was on the border, I was bordering on a major financial human crisis. It was going to be a crisis in many dimensions. If I couldn't pay my mortgage, if I didn't have funds for my basic expenses, a situation that I hadn't actually experienced in a long time. Okay, I was doing what I could do to gain employment income, but the scope was very narrow because I was trying to go through the usual enhanced disclosure, the usual criminal bureau checks, the usual employment reference, all of that, and then ongoing application for new roles, attending interview. So I was expenditure. There was making a lot of expenditure on transport, and this is like winter time, and I was making expenditure, and I wasn't getting a lot of income back, at least not yet. So I had to carry myself by constantly fighting the temptation, warding away off the temptation to panic, to yield to fear. And that was when I discovered the principle of um, being logical in my thought process. When even though outwardly or circumstantially things were quite, uh, I was in a very dire economic state. How do you ring in your thoughts which want to go all haywire? How do you stop yourself from uh, collapsing in worry? How do you stop yourself from uh, becoming depressed about your situation when there isn't any any prospect or any chance of things changing? When it's winter and the heating in your flat, it's in a real bad state. When there isn't enough in your refrigerator, how do you handle yourself? Keep your dignity. How do you motivate yourself every day? when the best that you get is from the employer saying that, yeah, you're going to be starting soon. I mean, how do you motivate yourself when you've actually started employment, but it's weeks before payment is made, your first payment is made? So those were the kind of situations that I faced in 2013. And one of the very first things I made a conscious decision not to quit, not to give up. That was one of the first things I decided. I made a conscious decision not to quit. So I had to work on myself to adopt a major perspective change. Now, the next thing I did was I kind of tried to discipline my thought process, because I acknowledged to myself that if I was going to resolve these challenges that I had, I needed to become friends with my resources, and the resources I had to embrace the fact that I had been given very keen imagination. I had proven in a work situation for 8.5 years, and well before that, I had proven that I was very skillful, I was a very intelligent, very gifted employee. And so I knew that it was just a matter of time for when I transferred the same expertise, the same skills to my private circumstances. And I knew even if I could apply a tiny bit of that expertise to my current circumstances, I knew that I would find a way out. So I discovered that because my problems were complex, if I went at them in their complexity, then I would only worry. And the worry would drain me, it would wear me out emotionally. I'll become sleep deprived, I would not be able to have good appetite, and in the end, I would actually just slip into depression. But if, on the other hand, I simplified what appears to be complex problems, I analyzed them and I simplified them into manageable sizes, then I could begin to go at those little bits, the simplified version of the problem. I could break them down into the financial, into the emotional, into the spiritual, into the cultural, and I could begin to remove all the obstacles to getting what I needed. And I will continue this on the next video clip. So watch out. Uh, look out for my next explanation of my journey. Speak to you in a bit.